Hi everyone. Let's talk about Amazon Web Services, simply known as AWS. So Amazon Web Services is an cloud computing service provider which started way back in 2006. So in this year, in 2021, AWS celebrated their 15th anniversary, and start of the AWS, they were like providing like two services for their customers to use. I mean, mainly AWS EC2 service and AWS S3. So EC2 is a compute service that you guys can simply spin up virtual machines and do your work, and S3 is an object storage that you can use to store your any sort of data in the cloud and just pay for what you use. Okay, so to start, let's talk about what is computing. So what is cloud computing? So simply said, cloud computing is just an renting another person's hardware in order to do your work without you need to provision, without you need to build up, and without you need to maintain the hardware itself. You just just renting the computing power of another person's hardware infrastructure and do your own work. That's what simply cloud computing means. So cloud computing has various definitions. And as you guys can see on my screen, I'm having the AWS on definition given for cloud computing. So the best place to learn about AWS is always AWS documentation. So this is the AWS documentation, the AWS white paper given an overview of what's AWS. So as you guys can see, you guys can just search for AWS overview in the Google or whichever your search engine of choice, and the first document you are getting is this particular white paper. Read through it because it has a great content. So I just explained an overview idea of what's cloud computing. Okay, so there are various advantages of cloud computing. You guys might have already discussed. So mainly the expenses you guys have to pay to when you are using cloud computing is very less, because you don't have something called you guys will only have something called operation expenditure, not the capital expenditure. So Capex and OpEx is really popular terms that will be used in cloud computing. Capex is something that you need to have capital expenditure with you that will require if you need to build up your own infrastructure. And OpEx is the operation cost, when the expenses that you have to pay daily when you are running your operation. So if you are to build your hardware infrastructure from the ground up, build your servers, build your warehouse, get the hardware components that need to run your infrastructure, for that sort of thing, you need to have a capital expenditure, and the capital expenditure is sometimes overutilized, sometimes underutilized. Let's say you build 10 servers, 10 high-gen servers, but you actually use at the start of your company, you actually use only 2 servers. So the other 8 servers out of 10 services are just wasted. Like wasted, that means that's there. Maybe you'll start it using in another couple of days down the road, but at the moment it's wasted, right? You could have just saved that money and built up something else. So it's wasted. Sometimes you guys just build only 2 servers where you might need 6 servers at the start. So in that case, it's underutilized. So it's hard to find the balance on what you need exactly. Always, most of the times, either you overutilize or either you underutilize. Most of the cases are overutilized because you're just simply afraid of that you might not have enough power and you bought more than what you need. So to avoid this, we can have cloud computing, because in the cloud computing, you just rent the computing power you need at the time you need. There's no like you have to wait like 5 to 6 days. No, you just have to wait like 5 minutes maximum to spin up the VM, and you can start using it as you need. So that's capital and operation expenditure. It's the trade-off. Capital expense for variable expense is the first one. Then massive economics at scale. That means if you are to build a warehouse, if you have to build an infrastructure data center, simply said, you will have to buy the equipment. And when you are buying the equipment, you might get 10 servers, you might get 5 servers, okay, 5 routers. The amount which you are going to get for a particular device, it will be comparatively higher compared to a service provider like Amazon, because they simply, when they start building up, they build 10 data centers with hundreds of thousands of servers, devices. When they do, and that massive scale of transactions, the cost per device are going to be really low. And that in turn, they can provide, due to that really low cost of building the infrastructure, they can rent their infrastructure for you guys, for people, other people who need the infrastructure to very minimal cost. So there are benefits of that massive amount of transactions they do, and that benefit of the low cost will be reflected on us when we are renting their infrastructure. And we don't have to guess the capacity. We just start what we think that we absolutely needed, and then we can, if requires more, we can just scale up. That's the elasticity of the cloud. Elasticity means you can either scale up or scale down. Scale up, scale down, or scale in or scale out. That means scale up and down means you can start with 2 vCPUs, 2 GB RAM. But if you need, you can go for 4 vCPUs, 8 GB RAM. And if you hire, if you start with 2 vCPUs, 4 GB RAM, and let's say you don't need 4 GB, you just need 2 GB, you can go back to 2 GB of 2 vCPUs, 2 GB RAM, and downgrade, scale down. And sometimes for your performance, you just need 2 GB vCPU and 2 GB RAM virtual machine, but you get hundreds of requests, and just one server cannot handle that 100 of requests. So then what you need is not a high powerful server, but what you need is multiple instances of the same server. So then you can simply scale out, have the same server replicated and distribute your traffic among server. Let's say you have a peak time at 12 noon, it's a peak time, so you need 5 servers to handle your workload. But at 4 a.m. on the morning, it's your peak time, so you just need to have 2 servers. So that's flexibility of scaling out and scaling in. Also, it sits in the cloud. Increase speed and agility is that what. So then you don't have to maintain the infrastructure. The cloud provider itself will just consider about physical security, physical maintenance and stuff. You just have to consider about the security of your data and what you do in the cloud. So that's how, when it comes to the model called shared responsibility. In the cloud, the model which runs security is the shared responsibility. You are responsible for part of the infrastructure and its security, and cloud provider is responsible for another part. Okay. And using cloud, you guys can go global in minutes. That means you can start your infrastructure. You can just provision your infrastructure in any region you want that they provide their services in, and you just can allow your customers to access that service over the internet. So you just don't have to worry about, okay, how I'm going to provide internet access to those places. I'm going to handle the traffic from United States. How I'm going to handle traffic from China. I'm going to handle traffic from India. You don't have to worry about those things because already the global infrastructure is laid out to you. Okay. So this is the mainly one of the 6 advantages of cloud computing. Then there's some types of clouds. Okay, so types of clouds computing are mainly hybrid cloud, private cloud, and public cloud. So private cloud is something called, this is a cloud deployment model types of cloud. Okay, so in the private cloud is something that you have a private cloud provision inside your organization itself. The cloud, those cloud resources is only accessible by your own organization. And the hybrid cloud is something called, you have a cloud in your organization, inside your organization, but you use another cloud service provider cloud environment also, and you bridge those two clouds together. Let's say in a scenario of like banking. So in the banking sector, you just can't simply put all your data into the public cloud. Okay, so some of the part of the data, some of your operations will be hosted on your on-premise cloud environment, and some of the computing scenarios, computing power, required power will be outsourced from your cloud service providers such as Amazon Web Services, Azure, or GCP. So in that scenario, what you are using in a hybrid cloud, part of the cloud environment is in your place, part of the environment is in your service provider. Sometimes like Azure and AWS provide on-premise cloud services also, like Amazon Outports. So in that scenario, what they do is they send you an hardware cloud rack into your in-premises that you will own and you will maintain, but you can access the services in there through the web console itself. So that's what hybrid cloud is. And then hybrid, I talked about them, private and the public. Yeah, so public cloud is just the cloud that's available for anyone to use. For example, AWS, Azure, GCP, OCI, Alibaba, Huawei, DigitalOcean. There are a lot of public clouds available. Those are clouds of an organization providing cloud services to other people in order to use and do their own services. Okay, so when it comes to cloud, this is the cloud deployment model. So types of cloud. So there are a way that cloud is using also, how cloud compute, how the services of the cloud is. So again, there are three typical scenarios: infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, and software as a service. So depending on the service that you are using, cloud service that you are using, it will definitely falls onto either of three categories. And depending on the category it falls into, the shared responsibility model. That means the responsibility that you share with the cloud provider in order to securely access and securely maintain your data and your infrastructure in the cloud will be different. Okay, let's say if you are using Ec2, the Ec2 will falls under infrastructure as a service category, and the things you have to worry about, things you have to maintain, is comparatively high when you compare it to a service such as Lambda. Yeah, I'm talking about AWS in here since our lecture is going to be in AWS. So Lambda is again a compute service, but it's going to be falls under platform as a service, because Lambda, you just have to run the function, you just have to provide the function that you want to execute. All the underlying computing infrastructure will be maintained by the cloud provider itself. Okay. So the software as a service is something like OneDrive, email, Google Mail, then Outlook. Those are the services provided by the cloud providers itself for you guys to just use it. Something called, if you talk about Amazon Lex is a machine learning service, text-based machine learning chatbot service. It's like a software as a service that you guys can integrate and use. It has a platform, it's kind of a software and a platform kind of size, because you can build upon it, or there's inbuilt services that you can directly use. So there are a lot of things. So I'm guessing you guys have already learned about these things in our earlier lectures. So let's dive into more toward AWS more. Okay. So AWS has at the moment more than 200 services, cloud services provided to you. So sometimes you guys wonder why those kind of 200 and more services, because Amazon tends to provide services that sometimes it's like difference is not so much apparent, because they tends to provide a service that is specifically can be used for specific scenario. that you guys will don't have to pay for unnecessary things that you don't want, and just use a service that exactly fits into what you need. So that's why they have a lot of services and with only size differences with each other. Sometimes it's confusing for you guys. Actually, for me, even when I'm using AWS, sometimes for me also it's confusing why this service exists, because there's another similar service to like this. But if you read on the service and if you think about how it performs, you will understand that there's a small difference between the two services. So that's how AWS is evaluating. And at the moment, there are like 80 availability zones and 25 geographic regions that AWS is providing their services on. So region is an geographical isolated area that you guys can build your service upon. And inside the particular regions consist of multiple availability zones. So availability zones are isolated with each other. Again, isolated with each other in the physical infrastructure wise, because they have their independent power sources, their independent computing capacity. And if one availability zone goes down, the other availability zone can keep on working without any issue. And between the availability zones within a region, they always have high speed, low latency connectivity. So whichever the infrastructure you build upon, you guys can spread your workload within the infrastructure, within a region across availability zones to have high availability and with low latency. And when they are creating regions, they always create regions in a pairwise just to provide their users with a DR scenario, disaster recovery scenario. So let's say US East 1 and US East 2 are a pair region, because they both will have same compliance and governance rules. Okay, so when you're considering what's your region, so when you are putting something into a cloud, we have to worry about the data security, governance and compliance rules of our organization body, our company, our country. So let's, for example, when we are putting something in Europe, we have to consider about GDPR, their data protecting rules. And when it comes to that sort of scenario, there are some countries that we can host our data, host our computing capacity. We have to take that compliance governance rules according when we are planning our infrastructure, our plan of action. Okay, so cloud also consider those things when they are building the infrastructure to provide services to us. Okay, so that's why we have 80 availability zones and 25 geographic regions around the world, that giving their customers to choose the regions they need as their need arises in the future. So as I said, Amazon started way back in 2006. Main two services were EC2 and S3. So they actually, what they did was that they had an on-premise cloud, a private cloud, and they were using their service internally for their Amazon employees, just to build their workloads, build their applications quicker for their developers to really spin up a virtual machine, do their stuff, store their files in central locations, and they were just like building stuff up. Then while they are doing the same thing, they have understood that a lot of their customers at Amazon.com customers are also looking for some sort of a computing capacity outsourcing mechanisms. Simply, they were looking for a cloud service provider, so that they will also be able to quickly build their own stuff. That's what when the company, Amazon, understood the futuristic scenario of cloud computing, and that's why they start the AWS cloud. And what they start using inside the company, they open up to the other people also. That's how the first two services, EC2 and S3, became publicly available and was starting to take around the globe with amazing rate of development. That's how they start. That's how AWS started. So if you guys have time, go to YouTube or search on the internet about 15th anniversary of AWS, and there's a Amazon like 1 hour of video regarding how easy to start in AWS. That's it. So it's hard. They explain one of their senior engineers explain how they started their journey. It's really cool to watch that one. So go through with this white paper if you have time, because it has a lot of deep understanding of security and compliance and how it works, what sort of services are there, how the security model has, and each of these cloud service providers like AWS, Azure, you name it, they also do their internal security reviews, their internal security compliance certificates. They take industry standard security certificates, because the people who build upon, people who use their services and build their workload on top of AWS and Azure also goes and take those certificates, ISO 27001, SOC 1, SOC 2, SOC 3, then HIPAA, GDPR, then PCI DSS. So they also, people who build upon those cloud providers infrastructure, they also go for those services. So having a certified infrastructure, cloud service provider infrastructure underneath will help the customers, and same time will help service provider, AWS or Azure or GCP or OCI, whatever. They will help them also to get more customers into their cloud platform, because when the customer has a mind of going sort of cloud certification, security certification, sort of like that standard certification, and if their cloud service provider has their certification on their base infrastructure, it's easy for the customer to build on top of that one and only certify their logical infrastructure and gain the certificate quickly. Otherwise, they will have to work with their cloud service provider, go on site and check the on site's deployment, hardware stuff, and that's a huge work. So having these kind of certifications already on top of the hardware infrastructure they have already building upon, it's easy for the customers and cloud consumers to build up their own and gain their certificates. That's actually a added advantage in both parties, like in the cloud service providers party and cloud consumer. So cloud consumer is actually us who build upon the cloud service provider's infrastructure, and the end customer is the person who's actually using the services we provide. Okay. So if I talk about the keywords like cloud service provider, it's like something like Amazon, Azure, that sort of service providers. And if I talk about cloud consumer, that's us, people who use the cloud to build up on stuff. So in this white paper, you guys can see the main categories of the Amazon Web Service Cloud. So these are the main categories, that category of services they provide. So if I go to compute services, if I'm going to Amazon, under compute service, the most popular service is Amazon EC2, which is Amazon Elastic Compute Cloud, EC2. So these are the type of EC2 services and stuff. So I will now show you guys how to create an account. So in Amazon Web Services, so let's see. So every cloud provider give you guys a free tier that you can play around it and get familiarized with the cloud environment to build upon small stuff and see whether that cloud environment actually helps you what you need. So there are multiple ways of this free tiers given to you guys. So Azure, if you take Azure and GCP and OCI, they give you like 1 month period with $100, $200, $300, like that, a credit limit, and allow you guys to use every service in their platform within that month in until you exceed the given credit limit, or if the month expires. After the month, there are some services that will be free for you guys for another 12 months. Okay. But Amazon does not give you guys a credit limit like that. It gives you guys some set of services which will be free for 12 months, and there are some services free always, and there are some services with free trials like 30-day trials, the 3-month trials that you guys can use. So but although Amazon does not provide you guys like credit limits like of other cloud service providers like Azure, GCP, and OCI, if you participate in Amazon events, you guys can earn credits. Like you guys can go to your web browser and search for AWS Events and go to there. So in here, you guys can see all the upcoming events of AWS. And there are some events that you guys can participate and win credit limits. Win AWS credit. So AWS gives you guys $25, $50, and that sort of credits that you guys can use and apply to your AWS account and build upon. If some of the services that you need to play around need credits, you guys can use these sort of things and get the credits. And these credits normally have like 1 year of expiration date. So it's another way you guys can get credits and build stuff upon. So this is the AWS free tier, and from this page you guys can see what are the services that's 12 months free, what are the services always free, what sort of services do give you guys trials, and sort of. So it explains what you can do, what's the limit, and lots of information from this particular page. Okay, so then you can click on this button, create a free account. So you guys can give your email address, password, confirm password, and account name, AWS account name here. And bear in mind, this AWS account name is not something that is permanent. Okay? Though you guys give your name in here, you can change this back, because AWS identifies its account by and something called account ID, not the name. Name is something like an alias for the account ID. So you guys can change the name later on if it's required, and but bear in mind there's a limitation of how many times you guys can change. So I will show you guys how to change it if you need in a moment. And you guys can continue these steps, provide a credit card, verify yourself, and create an account. So once you create an account, you guys can go ahead and type AWS console and sign in. And this is the sign in page. So as you guys can see, there's 2 options you guys can choose to sign in. So first time when you create the account, you have to go with the option root user, because the email address you provide when you are creating the account will create a root user account in your AWS account that's getting created for you. Then you have to provide your root user email address, then your password. If you do not have a password, you guys can put your root address in here and select on forget password, and go and set up your password as you need. Okay, so sign up using this one, and once you sign up, you guys will get this particular interface. So this is your AWS management console homepage. Okay, and from just as a looking at it, you guys can see from here, you guys can see all the AWS services. These are the categories, and under the categories, what are the services available. So all the services are listed here. And from here also, you guys can see the same thing. You can favorite your what you need. So if you can favorite like this. See if I want favorite my one of my services, I can click on the star and will add to my favorites. See, and if you know the services name, you just can simply search from it from here. So you guys can search it from here, and this is from by clicking on here, you guys can get a cloud shell. Yeah, so simply by this is something like a command shell that you will get in that you can use to interact with the AWS. So if I click on here, so this is a preloaded cloud shell that is something like your command line interface that you can use AWS CLI to interact with AWS itself. And it's as it says, it's preloaded with AWS CLI, Python, Node.js, and there are some other tools like Golang and stuff. So you can use this interface to build upon, and it has 1 GB of free tier, 1 GB free for AWS region storage. So until 1 GB, there won't be charged for any of the files you store in here. And you guys can fiddle around it using the console. If you have fiddle around with CLI, if it's more familiar to you rather than AWS console itself. So it will take some time for my environment to be created. Until it's created, I will go back to my console. And here you guys can see any notifications that you get, schedule changes, other notifications, event log, open issues. So if I go event log, I get all the what happened in the AWS environment. What are the issues? If there are any issues affecting my operations, it will be listed in here. Okay, event category, it's an issue. There was a directory service operation issue in the region AP Southeast 2. So AP Southeast 2 is Sydney. So in Sydney region, there was an issue with the directory service, AWS directory service started at this particular time and ended at this particular time. So all the issues AWS has with their services will be tracked in here, and the status and the what's the region, all those stuff. So if you want to go into more detail, you can click on this one, and it will give you guys affected resources. Again, from here, if there are any resources of ours that's affected, it will be shown in here. So let's say I had a directory service hosted on Sydney and it was affected due to this particular issue. It will be my ARN, my resource name will be shown in here. And then this is a summary of first issue, if it's resolved, what's how it was resolved, and their time and specific those stuff will be shown in here. So summary of the attacks, summary of the event and how it's resolved. And okay, and now it's my cloud shell is up and running. So I can run my AWS CLI commands in here without any issues. Or if I need, I can think on Python. I do not have Go installed it still. So I can play around with the node, I think. It should have Go. Yeah, node is there. Okay. See, no, wait, can't remember how to go because I'm not a go you sorry. Not JS user. Yeah. Okay. Simple method. Control C works always. Yeah. So if it's done with this one, you can upload file. If you want to upload any files to this particular environment, or if you want to download a file from this particular environment, you can do that one. So this is basically a Linux environment you are getting. So yeah, you are getting Amazon Linux 2 environment. Okay. So you guys can basically work this as your Linux computer, Linux terminal, and work on it. If you want to upload a file, you guys can click on action, upload a file. If you want to download a particular file, you can click on download file. If you want to restart your shell, you can click on restart. If you are done with it, you can click on delete AWS home directory. This is the preferences for your shell. So this particular shell, cloud shell, is not available for all the regions. At the moment, only very few regions are available with the cloud shell. Okay. So if let's say if I go to Singapore region, I'm sure whether still it's available. Yeah, as you guys can see, in the Singapore region, I do not have the cloud shell. If I go to Ohio, I have the cloud shell. If I go to North Virginia again, I have the cloud shell. Okay, so these are the regions which I talked to you about, so I think, yeah, I talked to you about using the in here global infrastructure. I told you guys the region information. Yeah, so these are the regions, 25 regions which I talked to you about in here, and not all the regions has exactly each and every service, both because there are some services are not available for some regions. So one thing I can tell you guys is that any AWS service that they publicly available will be first definitely available on North Virginia. So North Virginia is like their global region. Any global services that you when you start using AWS, you guys can see there are most of the services are regional basis services, and there are some services which is available for the entire global. So if you put any particular service in one region, you won't be able to see the same resource in another region because those services are in region specific. But global services, you from any region you can access those resources. So North Virginia acts like a global region because any service that you use globally, it's actually based in North Virginia. And any new service that AWS releases will be first available in North Virginia. So, and the North Virginia is the lowest cost on most of the resources because each and every single region has their variable cost. So you guys can see, I will show you guys how to find the cost and stuff. And so highest expensive one is the Sao Paulo, South America. And lowest expensive one in the most cases is North Virginia, then Ohio, then Ireland, and sometimes Mumbai. So North California is again a little bit expensive, and so North Virginia, Ohio, Oregon are the most less expensive expensive regions. Then Ireland is the next one. Okay. And if I go to the next, so from here you guys can select on the region that you want to work on. So remember, when you are selecting the region, you have to consider the compliance requirement, then the governance and the latency sometimes. But the latency is not much of a issuing factor. But if your application is heavily dependent on latency, Like let's say your customer base is in like Asia, it's not be wise for you guys to put the your infrastructure, your cloud host your cloud application in like Milan, Paris, or like North Virginia. Sometimes if your application is highly sensitive to the latency, then you have to use something like Singapore, Sydney, or something like that. So depending on your requirement, you have to select a region. If you are like just play around, I advise you guys to use North Virginia because it's the lowest cost region. So, and the next one, then next menu, you guys can see how you guys can get the help, forums, documentation, training, resource center, and the support center. So from here, you guys can talk with expert people and get some help in your designing your workloads, designing your infrastructure, and you guys can see the discussion forums that you can visit in here. So any issues that you have, you can use the discussion forums and get help. So this is a community based one. People will not directly the support people will use this one. This will be used by the people like us. That who so people who knows about AWS will come here and answer your queries, but they won't be the support people from the AWS itself. Okay. And the documentations, then training and certification, you guys can follow free courses from here. So there are free courses in here. Events, the blog is there. Okay. So skill guides, then so this is the resource center. So from here you guys can find what are the other places that you guys can find on find and learn about AWS. So there are workshops provided by AWS, hands-on labs, white papers. So white papers are like something like crucial reading documents that you when you are going for like developing high-end infrastructure architectures in the AWS. And this is AWS support. So in here you guys can raise tickets to AWS support itself, the support personnel itself, to get your issues resolved. So there are 3 types of AWS support plans. So since I'm having only a basic plan, I'm this one. So and the basic plan, you guys can only raise tickets regarding your billing information and account support and service limit increase. So you guys cannot get technical support using the basic plan. If you want to get the technical support, you guys will have to use you guys have to use either business support or enterprise support. So business support will cost you guys at the moment. So if I go to my support plans information, AWS. So the doesn't matter you have a very good background of AWS, always use documentations up, because cloud is an extremely developing, extremely changing industry, and what you know and what you think you have today will be different from what you are going to use tomorrow. So every time when you are doing something from the beginning, always refer to AWS documentation, regardless of you know that one. Just skim through the document to see whether there are any new things that you. So there are like actually there are, so my mistake, there are like 4 methods. So basic is the default thing you are getting. Apart from that one, you have developer, business, and enterprise. And for developer, you will get $29 per month or 3% of your AWS charges, but whichever the highest. Okay. And for business, you will be charged $100 per month for business level support, $100 a month, or whichever the highest out of these three. And same way for enterprise support, we are getting 15,000. So depending on the support plan you are choosing, the what you will get, but the support level you get will be different. So as I said, basic will only be allow you guys to raise cases for about billing information, account access issues, service limiting fees, such that. But if you go for technical, one of these three, you will be able to raise technical support cases also. The difference is the SLAs will be different, and for developer a support plan, you only will be able to chat with the person, but in business and enterprise, you will be able to have calls, have shared sessions, and get your issues sorted quickly. And when it comes to enterprise support, you will get dedicated people for dedicated teams for you yourself also. So enterprise support organizations that goes for enterprise support will have the dedicated person from allocated from AWS for you, for your issues, for your advisors, for your infrastructure designs and such. So depending on infrastructure, the level of support they are getting will be obviously going to be changed. So let's go ahead and I will show you guys how to first, once logged in. Now I'm logged in as my root user again. So once you logged in as root user, first thing that you have to do is you have to click on in here, as you guys can see, in here it says Cloud Live. So actually what you guys can see is in here you will be able to see your account ID with your name. But since I have given a name for my account, I can see my account name in here. So you guys can change this one. But before doing anything, if you are logged in as root, first thing you have to do is that you have to click on here, go to my security credentials, and from here set up a strong password, more than what you have if you're possible. And if your password is already strong, you don't have to worry about that. You can click on MFA and set up MFA, multi-factor authentication. So that's the first thing you have to do. And then once you have done that one, you guys can go to back to your console and search for IAM. So to control the access to AWS console, there are two ways that you can do that one. One is using identity and management services, AWS IAM service. Another method is by using AWS single sign-on service. So AWS single sign-on service is a little bit different from IAM, and it's most of the times used for a scenario like enterprises and which have multiple AWS accounts under them. But AWS, since you guys are using AWS as a starting people, what the service most familiar to you guys will be AWS IAM. So click on IAM. So from here, you will be able to see your account ID information, account aliases. So if you want to change your account alias, you guys can click on this one and customize your alias and give an alias for yourself. And that alias will be saved to you, and that will be your account alias. Which, and if you have given an alias at the start of the creating your account, it will be shown in here. You can change that one and you will be able to get a custom sign in URL apart from this one. Okay, so once you secure your root account, it's advisable by AWS and a lot of security personnel also not to use your AWS root account every time you log in and do anything in AWS. You should have an IAM account, IAM user account, and you should use that account to do your changes. So you should click on users, and then you should create a user, IAM user. So I have already created IAM user. Anyway, I will create a new one. So I have to give you a name. And then there are two ways that you guys can access AWS. One is by using AWS Management Console, which we are using right now. So if you are using that one, you have to give a password. And the other method is by using AWS CLI. So if you are to use AWS CLI, you need to have access keys. So custom password, and you guys can click on custom password and give a password, and then I'm going to select auto generated password. Then if you want your user to be enabled to change the password next time he or she logged in, you have to click on this, check this box. This will add a permission set called IAM user password policy to your user that will allow that particular user to change its own password. Okay, then click on next permissions. So from here, you guys can either add the particular user to existing group if you have a group in here. So normally what's the advisable method is to not to manage individual users, but to manage your users by using groups, because managing multiple users in a scenario like in an organization. So managing users like one to couple of users, 5 users, 10 users is, yeah, that will be easy. Okay. But let's say your organization had hundreds of users. Managing users individual will be a hectic process, and you will do mistakes, and you won't be able to properly manage permissions assigned to them. So the best method to manage users is through groups. So simply you should not, so what I am doing right now is not at the advisable method that you should do in an industry scenario, but since you are using a single person, it will be okay. And if you are going to share your account with multiple users, always manage users through groups. So since I'm just show you guys how to use AWS IAM service, so I'm going to just not going to create a user group. I'm just going to assign permissions to the particular user. So if you have a group, you can assign that user to a group, and the permissions assigned to the group will be automatically applied to the user. Or if you have another user, similar user, and you need to have the same permissions, you can copy permissions from existing user, select the user and click on next. And if you do not have existing user, you can attach permissions to the user. So these are policies. So permissions are written as policies. So these are actually JSON documents. Let me try to show you guys one document. Okay. So these are actually JSON documents, and which declares what you can do or you cannot do in an account. Okay, so the policies, AWS policies are in few types, like in job function, AWS manage, and custom manage. So any policy which have this particular icon in front are AWS manage policies. Okay, and you should, depending on what you need to do, you should attach the policies accordingly. So since I'm going to create a user that I can do anything in the account, I'm going to attach the administrator policy to my user. But remember, the root user and the AWS IAM user with administrator access are not two users with same level of access. They are not similar, because root user, again, as in Linux, so if you are familiar with Linux environments, Linux also has a root user and admin users, right? And again, root users and admin users in Linux is not similar, because root has higher power than administrator users, because root user can do absolutely anything, but admin users cannot do the absolute anything. They are limited in some way. Again, in AWS also, the root user can do absolutely anything. There are no restrictions. You can play around with whenever, whichever, whatever method you want, and you can just break your account and do anything. But the administrator AWS IAM administrator account also will have admin functions. You guys can do lot of administration stuff in the account, create services, play around with services, delete them, update some settings of the account. But you cannot do some stuff that, and that signs there will be some stuff that you will need your root user exactly to do changes. One of the most common example is to enable the support method. I showed you guys just earlier, there are multiple support methods. So normal one is the basic, the other with 3 persons support plans are the developer, then business, and the enterprise. To enable one of those support plans, you cannot do that one using the IAM user with administrator access. You need to sign in as the account root user if you want to do a change like that one. So bear in mind, it's not the same thing, but to do your day-to-day work, you are not going to do any change your support plans day-to-day, right? So to do your day-to-day work, IAM user with the administrator's permissions is more than enough. And again, you should not have the administrator to access even as an IAM user if you don't need it. Okay. Always try to attach the least amount of permissions you need. So in the cloud, one of the main things in regarding providing access to the people to your account is the least privilege method. So it's not only applicable to other scenarios that you use the system, it's really applicable to cloud also. It's actually a like more stress factor. So only when you're providing access to another user, the only method that one of the method that you can use is to create IAM user accounts, just what I show you guys earlier. And if you are using that one, only attach the permissions that you need. So see, this is the basic things that you need to get to know when you are just starting with AWS. So that's why I'm taking some time for you guys to show you guys. And so since I'm going to use it with admin privileges, because I need to show you guys everything, I'm going to create it as administrator access, then tags. So tags are something called like labels. So almost every AWS service, not everything, almost every service in AWS, you guys can add tags, assign tags. So tags are set of labels that you can use to identify set of AWS resources together. And you can use tag to track the cost of the AWS services that you use. Grant access. So when you are managing permissions, when you are managing access, to your resources, you can use tag to manage access. So when you are going through the cloud side, if you are going to the cloud side, and if you are going even not, this is not like actually applicable on the cloud, it's actually applicable to most of the scenarios. You guys can see there are two methods of providing access. Models like RBAC and ABAC. Earlier it was like RBAC. Now there are two methods mostly used: RBAC and ABAC. RBAC, role-based access control, and ABAC is attribute-based access control. So for attribute-based access control, what the main factor you use is the tags, the labels. So in the Azure, it also calls tags. Sometimes in the GCP, you call it labels. Those are also it's called labels, as far as I remember. And tags are really important. Okay. So when it comes to organization, when it comes to industry, when they design the infrastructure that they are going to deploy in the cloud, they discuss on a tagging strategy that will cover all the scenarios that they have to cater. So you should have a good tagging strategy. And yeah, when you are playing around, like, you get lazy. Yeah, I also get sometimes lazy. Earlier also, when I'm playing around with AWS, I also get sometimes lazy, and I just skip and go to next review. I can do that or not. It's not mandatory. Put in tag is not mandatory, as it says it's optional. But it's better you can use tags always. Even though you are playing around with stuff, at least put a tag saying who created it, what's the use case. Okay, just let's say I just want to make usage. I'm going to give a tag key name usage and my for demo. You can't have spaces, but you can have dashes and underscores. Okay, so you can't have spaces. So don't put spaces in key or in value. Don't put spaces there, but you can have special characters like colon, dash, underscore, like that. So just put a tag. So depending on your scenario, and go next, and you can create user. So as you guys can see, the two permissions were attached to me, administrator and IAM user change password, because I check on the box saying allow this user to reset the password next time he logged in. Okay. Once you create the user, you will be direct to a screen like this once you create it. So from here, you guys can see your username, then your access key ID and the secret key and the password. So this is the auto-generated password. I can copy it from there. And this is the access key and the secret key. So these two things are used for you to access your AWS using AWS CLI, AWS command prompt, AWS CLI tool. Okay, so AWS CLI tool is command line tool that you guys can use to access and control AWS. Whichever you do in the console, you can do it in AWS CLI. And frankly, whichever, actually not whichever, everything, whichever and more, because there are some things that you cannot do in the console, but you can do it using the AWS CLI. Okay, so if you want to use AWS CLI, you will need to install it first. So there are two AWS CLI versions, AWS CLI version 1 and AWS CLI version 2. So do not use AWS CLI version 1 now, because it's actually getting little obsolete. It's not deprecated completely, it's still in use, but AWS is more focusing towards AWS CLI version 2. And they also, every time they have chance, they recommend us to use AWS CLI version 2. So from here, you guys can see how to install AWS CLI version 2. on Docker, on Linux, on macOS, or in Windows. Click on whatever the operating system that you are using, and you guys can follow this particular page and install AWS CLI. It's direct, straightforward. And once you install AWS CLI, you can use your console and your command prompt and access, just as I show you guys earlier. So download this particular CSV which contain all those things. So to access using AWS CLI, you will need these two access key ID and the secret key. So I will not go in deep on how to access, because when using AWS CLI, you guys will see, okay, this is how you download it and configure AWS CLI. So this is the configuration basics. You will need access key, and you will need the secret key and region and output format. And you guys can type AWS configure and configure the access key. So once you type the AWS configure in your CMD or your PowerShell or your Bash shell, anything, depending on the operating system you are using, you can just type AWS configure, and it will ask for your AWS access key ID, your secret key, and the region you are going to work on, and the output format. So output format can be JSON, text, table, YAML, any of those 4 types. And these these two values are the values that you can find from here. So you can download the CSV and keep it with yourself, or you can send your instructions by email. Okay, class it. I'm not going to go to that stuff. You guys can try it from by yourself. And since I'm not going to use any of these 2 accounts, I'm going to delete them. So I just deleted my user accounts, and since I'm not going to use it. So in the IAM, you guys can, you can write your own policies. So these are the managed policies. But if you say you don't want to use a managed policy because it's given too much permissions, or you want to join multiple permissions that with together, because when you are actually developing the resources, developing an application, running an application, 90% of the time you are not going to use the manage permissions. Actually, yeah, 90% of the time, yes. Actually, if your application is going to be a secure application, will be open to the customer, 90% of the time you are not going to use existing permissions, manage permissions, because most of the time it's not going to give you guys this privilege, because these policies are created for the ease of use, for you to quickly develop, quickly try things out and play around with. These permissions are not created for you to use it for the production environments, just for ease of use and quickly develop things, test it out and stuff. Once you test it out and your application is working, okay, you are happy with the application, and you are now going to open it to your customer base, you should write your own permission set using the exactly needed permissions, okay, what you actually need. So you guys can find those permissions and stuff from here, and Action List. So this is the AWS Action List. So basically from here you guys can see what are the permissions that each and a service will need. So if I go to AWS EC2, let's say Elastic Compute Cloud. Yeah. From here, I can find all the permissions that AWS EC2 offers. That if I am to do anything in AWS EC2 service, what are the permissions that you need? So if I am to start instance, I am to run an instance, copy an image, if I am to create an AMI, if I am to create start an easy network, VPC, network subnet, if I am to create a network, if I want to create a subnet. So let's say, let's try and there are so many permissions in here, so let bear with me. Yeah, let's say if you want to, if you want to create an AWS EC2 instance, you have to have AWS EC2 run instances permission. So grant permissions to launch one or more instances. See, so these are the permissions, and in this particular table it explains what's that particular permissions allow you to do. So you guys can use this particular page and identify what are the permissions that you need to do specific thing and a specific service in the AWS, and construct your own permission set and use it. So with this, from here you guys can click create policy. Either you guys can, if you know the JSON, if you know the exact permissions, you guys can go ahead from here, click on here. Sorry, this ID is sitting required here. Mistake. Let's not put SID because SID is not actually required in here. Select allow. Then I slightly made a mistake. Second. You can. I just wrote a policy allowing for all the resources in the AWS. Allow me with run and create an AWS instance, and it will be affect to all star means all resources. But in this case, since I'm giving my permission to EC2 run instance, EC2 service, and the permission service and the permission of that service, and star means any EC2 instance, I'm having this particular permission. Or you guys can, either you guys can use it from here, or either you guys can create the same permission set using from here. As you guys can see, this is how you guys can write the permission using the both methods. Click on next, can provide tags again, and click name, provide a name and the description, and create policy. Will create a policy that you guys can use. So if you want to create a user group, you can click on user groups from here, create a group. Assign users to the group if you have, and then the assign policies to the group. So create group, and I have a group with test group 1 with permissions, these two permissions, and I don't have any users. Let's say if I create 2 users, so I create a user, test 1, now auto generate password, do some change password, next permissions, and I'm going to add that particular user to the group. Click next and review and create user. And close. I'm going to download it because I'm going to delete it again. And I have a user in the particular user group. Remember, in this right now, I did not attach any permissions to the user itself, right? But I attached my user to the group. And if I go to my particular user, I can see this particular permission is directly attached to my user because I checked on that checkbox allowing my user to change the password next time he logged in, and another 2 permissions are attached via the group. See, these 2 permissions are attached to a particular group, and since I attach my particular user to group, I have these 2 permissions. Let's say if I have another group, let's go group, and that particular has support user permissions and RDs. Create group. And I need my user who has these 2 permissions, not to have direct connect permission and glacier permissions. I need him to have support user permissions and RDS full permissions. What I can do is I can either attach these permissions from here, but it's not the best method. As I told you, when you are managing users, you should use groups to manage. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to group, going to remove the assignment with the particular test group 1, and add this particular user to my group 2. And if I go in here now I have RDS full permissions and support user permissions. So this is the best method that you can manage users. So users should be managed with using groups, and permissions should not attach directly to the users. So I took a little bit of time for you guys to show AWS IAM service because it's the starting point. So you should have good starting point when you're working. And next I will go through with other services quickly. So IAM is not simply, we are not going simply, IAM is not this. So IAM is like a really big area because it's actually central providing access, because I just show you guys the small stuff that you need to know when you're getting started. So IAM can be integrated with other enterprise services. You can use single sign-on services with IAM, and like if you have already an identity provider like Azure Active Directory, you can connect your IAM service with Azure Active Directory and stuff. So the other access management service that I need to show you guys is AWS SSO. So this is the AWS SSO. It's like completely not completely. It's a little bit different from IAM. But what actually happens is AWS SSO uses AWS IAM underneath, and AWS SSO is little bit easy to use and like have more flexibility and more integrations with other identity provider services, and you can you are going to use AWS also in the most cases that you have multiple AWS account under your organization to use. Okay, so That's one thing. So you guys will be able to learn AWS Sso because I will do it in a later time. And the most used and first two services I'm going to talk about with you the next first two services that AWS actually provided uh, to the public, which is the first thing is AWS EC2. So AWS EC2 is like the most common, most popular service under compute category that which allow you guys to create virtual machines and use it, deploy your stuff, directly use it. So let me show you guys how to quickly deploy an instance. So you can click launch instance from here either, or you guys can click on instances from here, launch instance from here, and these are all the ISOs like images that's available for you to build up and EMR. So there are Windows images, there are Linux images, there are Mac OS images. So as you guys can see, the Amazon Linux, Mac OS, see, Mac OS, Big Sur, Catalina, Mojave, so Windows, Red Hat. So there are so and so forth. There are a lot of services that are available for you. And there are AWS Marketplace images also that are specific marketplace, like hardened images, more secure images, and more like customized images. And if you have your own images, you can have them also. And community images that is provided by the community itself, that is built with some particular applications, particular security settings, configurations, some stuff like that. So from here you can click start, and if you are having a free tier AWS account, click this box. So it will show you guys only the images that is free tier available, so you won't be costed additionally. And when you have click on this, you have the architecture to be selected, 64-bit architecture, AMD Intel 1 or ARM in architecture. So depending on the one you want. And then next you can select this size. So instance size. So is it 1 vCPU, what's memory size, then instance storage type, network performance, IPv6 support is there or not. So these are the AWS EC2 family, and the family and the type. And depending on the family and the type, the number of vCPUs, memory are going to be changed. And T1, T2, and T3, so on, those are family generations. So T2 is older, T3 is newer, and T3 again T and T4 is newer, and again C4, C5, C6 there. So there are, when it comes to AWS EC2, there are EC2 types. Okay, so EC2 types in the same general purpose EC2s, then there are memory optimized EC2s, there are compute optimized EC2s, there are high performance EC2s. So T2 are general purpose EC2 type, and C is like compute optimized, M is like memory optimized, G is like graphics and stuff, so on. So there are a lot of type of instances, and depending on the what you need, you can use it. So if you want to read more about this, you can go on AWS EC2 types. Okay. So general purpose, compute optimized, memory optimized, accelerated computing, storage optimized, instance features. So these are types. So specific engine paper, measuring how to measure your performance. You guys can read about this on the documentations. And again, in the memory optimized also, there are R is the memory optimized instances, and 6 is the generation. And then you will have another letter with simple with G, sometimes A, sometimes B, sometimes N, sometimes going to be different. So G means the processor type you are using. So By the secondary letter, it depicts another feature of the same in the instance family type. So R6G means memory optimized 6th generation instance. G means with Graviton processor, not Intel or empty. So Graviton is another processing type that developed by AWS. So depending on this, the cost going to be different. So with these factors, the memory with the family and generation you are going to select, it's going to have different types of PPC performance, memory performance. The limits going to be changed, and the other factor you are going to change is the price. And you need to consider price also when you are using some service, because if let's see how price going to be changed for EC2. So can click select on AWS EC2 price, and from here you guys can see how the EC2 price going to be changed. And when it comes to EC2, normally when you're using an EC2, if you use a EC2 in the normal sense, what you will be built on demand. Pay for what you are using, pay as you go. So a lot of phrases are there to depict the same thing. You will be billed only for the time you are using. Okay. If you use the instance at the moment, it will be built, and once you are done it, and when you delete or when you shut down the instance, you will not get billed for that one. But the price is there, and the price you can lower your price depending on 3 factors. So if you are on demand, will be built in a way, but if you are using spot instances, your cost for the instance going to be 90% less. And if you are going to use savings plans or dedicated host, your cost going to be different again. Savings plans, there are 1-year savings plans and there are 3-year savings plans. So, and depending on the service plans you are going to use, again you are going to have lower prices, like 75% lower, like 72% lower. Reserved instances are there with 72% lower prices. And then the dedicated host going to be there. Like normally when you're trying to spin up an instance, your hardware infrastructure will be shared. Like you will have one hardware rack, and inside one hardware rack there will be 10 VMs spinned up, 100 VMs spinned up, depending on the capacity and stuff. But the thing is, one of that VM virtual machine will be used by you, and the other virtual machine will be used by another person. So your hardware infrastructure will be shared among multiple people. But let's say due to some security requirement, you don't want to share your hardware infrastructure. You want dedicated hardware infrastructure for you. Then you can use dedicated host method. But the thing is, you will be built higher than the normal people will build due to that one. Because that hardware will not be shared with other people. So the cost that AWS has to bear in maintaining and keeping that dedicated hardware for you will be built for you, because it's actually, that makes sense, right? Because they are not charitable organizations to bear losses and provide services to us. They are also doing a business, and they have to cover the cost they have also. And spot instances, as I said, 90% will be cheaper, but the thing is, spot instances are not reliable. They are like will be bidding on instance capacity, and if the instance capacity is no longer there, the resources are no longer available, your resource access to that particular resource will be gone. So spot instances are cheaper and best used for stuff that require testing, trial and error testing stuff, just to play around with, not for having reliable workloads. Okay, so you guys can use the pricing calculator to calculate your price. So this is AWS pricing calculator. So you can click on create estimate, and you guys can, anyway, this is pricing calculator is something most of the engineers or people who design AWS infrastructure for the customers use, because when they design an infrastructure, when they start using an infrastructure, they need to provide cost also. So they use this pricing calculator to calculate the cost and give an estimate, a plan to their customers that this your infrastructure will cost this much of dollars per month. So you can use this one to frankly have a way that how you will be built. Okay, so I just show you guys just to have an idea. So you can select on the instance type, then click on next, then you can so as long as you create a AWS account, there will be few resources created for you. So this is real in the case of scenario that you are creating an account for yourself, but when there are multiple ways that AWS accounts can be created. So I showed you guys one method that will be creating an account for yourself, but this is not some case. It's true for scenarios like creating AWS account for organizations. Okay, so I'm not going to go deep in that one, because in order to do anything, so this is virtual infrastructure, yes, but it actually behaves as a physical infrastructure. Okay, so if you want to have a computer, what do you need? First of all, you need a network, right? Without a network, you won't be able to plug in and work. So you need to have a network. So when you create a particular AWS account for yourself, your network is built for you actually. So I will go and show it to you guys. VPC network and content delivery. So this is your network. This will be built for you, for each and every one of you once you create your AWS account. Okay, so you need to have a network and subnets to be worked with, and you will need the internet gateway to access internet, and you'll need routing table to map your routes to the internet and stuff. See, so this is your base infrastructure. So to build anything, you need to have a network. So this is your base infrastructure. So when you create an AWS account, your base infrastructure is actually built for you. So you just can start working on your base infrastructure. So you can easily create this particular EC2 instance and start working. But if you do not have your base infrastructure, first of all, you'll have to do that one. So this is how you can start building your base infrastructure, your network. Then from here, you guys can build your EC2 instance. Okay, and then click on next. Give a root ID. Then you can select on your SSD type you are going to use. So depending on the SSD type you are selecting, you will be built accordingly, and you can encrypt your hard disk from here and provide tags. Then security group. So when it comes to on-premise network, you guys are using firewalls to secure, right, your entire devices. So in the cloud, you have multiple ways to you can secure your infrastructure. So the freely available methods are your security group, which will have a logical firewall around your resources that you are going to deploy. And then the other thing is network ACLs. So network ACLs will be deployed in your VPC, but your security groups will be deployed in around your resources. So it's something like this. Let me show you guys that one. So it's something like this. So you will have a VPC, and inside the VPC you will deploy your EC2 instance, and your security group will be a logical firewall that will be situated outside your EC2 instance, around your EC2 instance, and your network ACL will be another logical firewall that will reside on with your VPC. So security groups of logical firewalls which are stateful, but your network ACS are logical firewalls that is stateless. So I think you guys might have already know what is stateful and stateless, because stateful tracks your communication and stateless does not track your communication. Because of these two differences, the behavior of network ACL and behavior of security groups are going to be different. So these two things are freely available things that you can use to secure your resources. Okay, so any compute resource that you guys are going to use will have security groups available for them to use. So you have to manage the security groups when you're creating the resources. Okay, so in my case, I can give a name, and I can since I'm going to create a Linux instance, I can say allow SSH traffic to port 22 from anywhere, means anyone can log in. So if you can give a specific IP address, then the description, click on review and launch, then your EC2 instance will be launched, and you can access your EC2 instance, you can do your stuff and stuff, so on. So I'm not going to go on deep, so because this is actually like a scenario and introduction to your AWS environment. So then I will go ahead and talk with you guys regarding the S3. So S3 is the second service actually AWS publish at the start of Amazon Web Services. So S3 is an object storage, basically storage service. So when it comes to storage service in the cloud, there are multiple storage services. There are block storage, there are object storage, there are databases, and depending on your storage requirement, you can use what's actually needed. So S3 is an object storage, which everything you store in S3 will be taken as an object. Okay, and S3 is high reliable and high reviewable with 11 nines of availability. So I think S3 is one of the services, one of the few services which has this kind of high availability durability rating with 11 nines. And S3 is something like storage service without the bottom. S3 just expands with your need. You do not have any limit with S3. You can store your life's data, maybe exabyte, maybe petabyte, maybe zettabytes. You can keep on storing it in S3 because it just simply expands with your requirement. When you start using an S3, you don't have to give a limit saying, okay, I'm going to create a S3 of 10 GB. No, just nothing like that. You just create a S3 bucket. We call this as S3 buckets, okay? Because it's like we are having objects inside a bucket, and objects can be either files, songs, text files, songs, movies, any sort of thing. You can put it into S3. Only thing is, things S3s are object storages, object level storages. You do not have like, it's not like a file storage, a file hierarchical system. You cannot do any in-place editing. That means if you upload the file to S3, you cannot like edit that file while on S3. You have to download it, edit it, and re-upload it. So that's the difference in object storages, but it's really good for data holding, data processing stuff. So basically S3 is like an data lake. So data lakes are, people are using data lakes to do for your analytical purposes, storing data and storing data for use in your application you are developing in the cloud. So basically S3 is an storage location. So if you want to create S3 bucket, it's simply you have to provide a name, and the name you are providing for S3 should be unique throughout, because S3 are accessible over the internet. Okay, you can make an S3 accessible over the internet. You do not have to log into the S3 to access the S3, download a file from S3. You can simply use the URI will be available for you, and use that to download the objects from S3 if you make the S3 public. Because of that one, when you create a S3, there will be a host name, routable, DNS routable host name created for you. Because of that one, your bucket name, the S3 bucket name should be unique to you. So if I type test and if I try to create bucket, I'm giving a bucket with the same name already exists. Although let's say, see, I do not have any buckets in this particular region, right? And S3 is a global service. So whichever the region I'm selecting, it's a global region. It's like available everywhere. And due to that constraints, S3 is creating a DNS name for the bucket we are creating. I cannot have a bucket which already anyone has in that particular name. So it should be unique to myself again. So simply just it. So I just create a bucket. So now I can upload object to my bucket and upload any sort of object, keep it there. And you will only pay for the storage amount you use. You will not pay for the bucket. So if I keep this bucket like this every day, even after 3 day, I will not get charged because S3 pricing is for the bucket and features that we use with the bucket. So S3 has multiple features. So S3, since S3 is bottomless storage device, you can use S3 for archiving purposes. You can archive all documents for archive documents like for 7 years, 10 years, 100 years, depending on your requirement. And when you are doing an archive sort of things, there are S3 types, standard S3, basic S3, and type of things. So depending on the S3 types, the cost per object going to be different. And you can have encryption on the S3. You can have S3 to host your website because in the S3 there's a feature called static web hosting. If I go to properties in here and if I go lower, there's something called a feature called static web hosting. So you can use S3 to host your website. If your website is a static website, you can use S3 to host your website even. So that's how powerful S3 is. So I'm going to delete my S3 since I'm not going to keep it. Okay. So basically S3 is the most popular storage device. Storage service, or not the device, sorry about that one. It's actually storage service that AWS offers. And something which I have seen in my life as a system engineer is that there is no scenario, there is no customer, there is no architecture that does not use at least one S3. Any architecture, any customer, any application, any system, any solution built upon AWS, they at least use a single S3. And sometimes some architectures, they are simply based on S3. You might have heard, if you are already working in any system engineer stuff, you might have heard a popular data lake solution called Snowflake. And Snowflake is actually one of the most popular and most easy data lake solutions out there in the world, and which are used by most of the services, multinational services. And that particular solution is actually based upon S3 of AWS. Snowflake is hosted in AWS itself, and they uses S3 to the max. They are all the features, their versioning, their methods, their encryption, their bottomless storage capacity with growing up as they need, and their pricing. So S3 as a storage is an extremely popular service that will be used by most of the people. So just now I talked with you guys regarding one of the compute services and one of the storage services that are most popular. Now I will talk you guys with Monterey. So it's good that you can create your workloads, store things in the cloud, right, easily. But The other two things that you have to consider is by how. So actually I taught with three things actually with you guys: how to provide access, how to use compute service, how to provide access to AWS account, and resources. We talked about AWS IAM, Identity Management Service, and then I talked to you about how to use computing, and I just gave you guys an introduction on EC2 service and how to create an EC2. Simply on how just show you guys small tips. You guys straightforward. You guys can go ahead and use that one. Then I talked to you about storage service, SNS3, and now I will talk about next two most important sections, which is security and monitoring. Okay, it's good that you guys can easily deploy a storage device, storage service, and start using it. It's good that you can create a VM quickly and start using it. But while using, you should be able to monitor what's happening in there, right? Are there any issues that I need to consider? Are my service limits are going to get blown off? Or is the CPU going more than 80% and is my performance of the EC2 going lower? Is my S3 bucket going to have too much request, or is it expanding as I need it? So to monitor what's happening in your AWS account and resources. So what's happening in your resources deployed in the AWS account, there's another service that you can use to check on them, which is called Cloud Watch. So Cloud Watch is the central monitoring platform of AWS, which is integrated with almost every service offered by AWS, and you can use AWS Cloud Watch to monitor what's happening in each service in metric wise and in log wise. Okay. So if you want to go to Cloud Watch, you can just simply search Cloud Watch. Okay. So this is the AWS Cloud Watch platform. Okay. So you guys can uh, watch what's happening in your AWS environment resources. Yeah, you guys can see logs. So I can create resources and send logs in here, logs of the particular resource. Then I can see matrices of particular resources. Then I can create events, schedule events in my system, in my account to happen. Like let's say start particular EC2 instance at this particular time, stop a particular EC2 instance at this particular time. You can do this by using this particular platform. You can use application monitoring and monitor your applications. You can configure your applications and get the trace data of the application performance in here, and monitor those, get those information and monitor and view those information from here. Then you can have resource health from viewed from here. So health of your resources that you're deployed in application stuff, and then you can get insights for your application and your workloads. Okay. So for example, let's say if I'm create a EC2, create here, create Amazon Web Service. I do not have it. So right now my EC2 is virtual machine is creating. So it's pending. So I have my creation request is sent, and we'll start creating my instances in few minutes. So still being created and provisioning from the backend. So in the meantime, I will go ahead and show you guys another service. So AWS Cloud Watch give you guys um, ability to monitor what's happening with the AWS, what's the CPU, what's the memory, how's the log of the application, and how the application behaves stuff, right? And let's say you want to monitor, you want to see what's happening in the AWS console itself. Let's say who did what activity in the AWS console, who created that particular instance, who deleted that particular instance, who created that particular S3. If you want to view that information, who did what in your AWS instance, there's another service that you guys can use to see that information. Who did what in your AWS console. It can be using AWS console, it's console, graphical console, or you can be something that did using the AWS CLI, right? Doesn't matter, whoever that do anything with your AWS account, those things will be tracked in another service called CloudTrail. So from the CloudTrail, from the event history, if you go here, you guys can see what are the events actually had happened in your AWS environment uh, up until last 90 days. Okay, so in here, the CloudTrail console will show you guys all the activities, all the management level activities. So when it comes to activities in the cloud, AWS cloud, the activities mainly differ into two types, or known as management activities and data activities. So data activities can also be tracked by using AWS CloudTrail, but by default it's not going to track data activities, because data activities are so much more compared to management activities. Okay, and due to that one, the console will not track the data activities by default. If you want, you can track it, but you'll have to pay additional cost for that one. But tracking of the management activities is free. So it's actual basic an activity log of whoever who did what in your console AWS account. Okay. As you guys can see, I just created the EC2 instance, and you guys can see the event name is EC2 run instance, the time, event source, EC2 service, type, resource name, and user who is the one created. Since I am logged in as my root account, since I am logged in as the root user to my account, my username is root. And you guys can see I created the key pair when I'm creating the EC2 instance. It's also logged in here. I describe images, I describe VPC, and I describe host. I went to EC2, describe images, use what are the AMIs available. So everything I did, described VPCs. I went and say VPCs and subnets, what are those? So describe VPC and describe subnets. So everything what you do will be available from here. So then we'll talk. So this is place how you guys can see what are the management events, what's happening in your account. And let's see my instance is up and running. Yep. So my EC2 instance is up and running. And if I go to my CloudWatch and then metrics, from metrics, I can see my EC2 metrics from here. Then from here, I can go into EC2 metrics, and I can select it. And we can go to dashboards. Let's see whether my matrices are still getting loaded, I think. So this is my EC2 instance. If I click on this one and click on monitoring, so it just started the EC2 instance, as you guys can see. So just have a dot. So normally by default, the monitoring will give you guys information every 5 minutes. So sorry, if every 15 minutes. Apologies. So if every 15 minutes it will be updated, as you guys can see. So 115, 130, 145 to, so its time is in UTC, and every 15 minutes it will be updated. And that's why if I go in here, matrices, let me go to here, dashboards, and see C2. I only have 1.10 actually, see, because it's not been 15 minutes, not haven't passed yet. I started my instance, so that's why all these things are having just dots in here, because this will be up and it will show my instance ID and monitoring. So monitoring disabled in the sense it's not monitoring completely disabled. In here, this monitoring disabled means in comes to monitoring, so basic monitoring will be applicable and available by default, and basic monitoring give you guys every 15 minutes information, and it will only show you guys network and CPU and disk. But if you want to get memory information and down to 1 minute monitoring, you need to go to your instance and enable advanced monitoring, manage detailed monitoring in there and enable it. But this will give you guys, as said in here, 1 minute information, but will be cost you guys. So normally in most of the scenarios we do not need 1 minute advanced information monitoring, and we just can use simply available monitoring by default and build our stuff. So whatever you need to monitor, you can see it from the CloudWatch. So CloudWatch is your monitoring console. CloudTrail is another monitoring console that will track your activities. This is the place for your resources and application monitoring. CloudTrail is for your resources and for your management activities, that will who do what in your account simply. And then I will talk to you guys regarding security. It was focused on security. So I will just talk to you about governance, how to provide access control and stuff, then compute, then storage, then monitoring, a little bit with security. Then if I'm going to talk to you about security, the most used service is Security Hub. WAF, then the Guard Duty. So as I told you guys earlier, there are in the AWS, when you create a free tier account, there are T types: always free, 12 months free, and trial versions. So AWS Security Hub is one of the trial version accounts that is a trial period. So AWS Security Hub scans your environment, okay, scans your environment, and with against some of the industry standards. So AWS Security Hub has three standards by default. One is AWS Foundation best practices. Another one is CIS best practices, and the third one is PCI DSS. Okay, so you guys can easily make sure whether your environment is PCI DSS standard compliant or CIS compliant or AWS Foundation best practice compliance using this one. It will check you guys for multiple factors and will show you guys whether your environment is secure according to those factors. Okay, and the AWS Security Hub is, and actually as the word says, it's an hub because AWS Security Hub can be integrated with other AWS security services as shown in here. So it can be integrated with Guard Duty, Inspector, Macy, Detective, and so on and so forth. There are some AWS Marketplace services also which can be integrated with AWS Security Hub. So Security Hub is a centralized place that you can use to view the security of your environment using multiple services that AWS provided. Then, so the Guard Duty, again Guard Duty is again a 30-day trial period service that you guys can use. So Guard Duty is like a SIEM. So since you guys might be cybersecurity, most of the cybersecurity people and most of the security personnel and even the system engineers in here will be using AWS Guard Duty to see what's happening against your environment. Any security threat, any abnormality will be tracked by the Guard Duty. So Guard Duty will need a learning period. So when you enable Guard Duty for the first time, you will not get details of your environment. It will require like 3 to 4 days depending on your traffic on your environment, depending on the changes in your environment. He will need like sometimes 3 days, sometimes 5 days, sometimes 1 week to learn about your infrastructure. And once it learn about your infrastructure, it will generate the threat assessment, threats that your environment face. It will detect the threats whether someone tried to access, hack your environment. And if they run a security scan against your environment, he will track it. He will track it from where it came, how it came, what the resource, what the IP, what the longitude and latitude of the location, what are the tools they use in order to perform those things against your environment. So Guard Duty is like a watchdog for your environment. It's not like DDoS attack service. This will not prevent anything. This will just detect and report. Guard Duty will not prevent anything, just detect and report. Remember that one. Okay. So that's two of the most used security services of AWS. So basically this is what AWS is, and this is how you guys can start working on with AWS. So there are, actually I said, there are 200 plus services in AWS. I cannot simply cover all the services, just I gave you guys an introduction to start using it, since these are the most popular services and most of the things that everyone start using it, and this is the those are the blessed things that services that you can start your life with AWS. And the other thing I want to show you guys is that if you are using free account, okay, you should delete what you do not use, because it's going to at the end cost you guys. Okay, so since I'm not going to use my EC2 instance, I'm going to delete it. So anything that you are not going to use, just delete them. And with this, you guys can start using any other tools like infrastructure as a code tools to test things out and stuff. So start AWS on hands-on. That's the best place you guys can start using. And if you want to learn more about these things, I think Udemy has a lot of good courses, and then you have good courses on Flora site. And that's one thing I need to show you guys is there are I showed you guys earlier the documentation and reading stuff. Apart from that, there are two more locations I need to show you guys. 1 second. there are two YouTube channels. So I'm guessing you guys spend most of time of time with YouTube and Facebook and maybe LinkedIn. Okay, so join. There are LinkedIn groups with AWS community, and there are Facebook groups with AWS community within your own countries or within international or service wise and stuff. Join those things. You will be able to learn more stuff in these things. And when you are spending more time in the YouTube, you guys can subscribe to two channels, which I'm going to show you guys now. One is AWS Amazon Web Services, and the other one is AWS Online Tech Talks. So both these channels will show you guys, let you guys learn new services, new technologies, new things that release for you, and what they can do, stuff, those kind of stuff. And so this is online text talks. So Amazon Web Services give you guys short videos, like what's new, small things that you guys can do, that new services they came up with. And Amazon also online tech talks are like more like in-depth videos. It will be going in depth with each service. So if you want to learn about EC2, can search EC2 from here, and you have an EC2 masterclass. Maybe it's a little bit old, okay, but the thing is, even though it's bit, sometimes some of the videos are a little bit old, some of the basic understanding, basic underlying infrastructure is same. Okay? So you guys can use those things to learn yourself. And so AWS EC2 Max instance launch. So new instance launches, troubleshooting stuff, small feature stuff will be available in these two, and the in-depth one will be given in here. And other than that, what you guys can use is reinvent videos. So AWS reinvent videos are other videos. So you guys can subscribe to this particular channel also, AWS Events. Okay, so AWS Events channel will give you guys a lot of events that's available for public. So reinvent, reinforce are major events that you have to go pay and go there. You have to buy tickets and go there. So if you do not have the capability to if you have the capability, please go ahead and attend those events. But if you do not have the capability to attend those paid events, after sometimes after the event is finished, after like within 1 month or 2 months, they will post those videos in here. Watch them, because reinvent and reinforce are the places that new services are publicly available, and new technologies, new partnerships, new solutions that they will announce to the world. And that's the one of the best places that you can learn, get to know people with AWS, and maybe sometimes you will get a good career opportunity also. So that's actually all from my end. So I will show you guys how to learn about AWS, places, documents, YouTube videos, and then gave you guys an introduction of to few services that will be used by multiple categories like governance, providing access, compute, storage, and then monitoring and security. So those are the mainly 5 sides that will most of the services will be used upon, and you guys can use those services to get yourself started with AWS. So I hope you guys have started learning something and get an understanding and basically get an interest in learning AWS. and start your cloud journey with AWS. Or if you are passionate with another cloud environment, by all means, try and learn about this stuff. So basically, I am working with AWS and Azure both, but most of the time right now I'm working with AWS. Earlier, seeing at AWS earlier when I'm starting my journey with those of 200 services, I was like, what the heck? How many services are there? How I can learn this stuff? But actually, what happened is that when you start learning each and every services, it's becoming more interesting. And one thing I want to stress you is that you do not have to learn from A to Z regarding a particular service to start using it, and you won't be able to do that one. And don't do that one. You don't have to. Don't do it, and you won't be able to do it. You don't have to learn about a particular service from A to Z to start learning that one, because if you can do it, okay, I'm not going to stop you guys. Try and do it, but it will take you guys so much of time. And when you finish learning about that particular service, you might sometimes you might forget things you start learning with, or sometimes time has passed away and you no longer need that particular service to do your work, or time has passed away, you cannot do that work anymore. Okay, so do not do that one. Just start using a particular service. While you are start using, look for documentation, look for videos, and start learning stuff. Okay, so that's my advice for you guys. And as I said, hope you guys learned something and enjoyed this particular video. And I wish you guys very best to start your life. And if you have any issues, you guys can reach out to me using comments and ask questions. I will be always happy to help. So have a nice day and stay safe.